She left her own young son with her sister and disappeared without looking back. 5 years of silence, no support, no remorse. And now she returned, declaring that she was not guilty of anything, because the child was already in safe hands. Will the court be able to make her answer for her actions? Will justice prevail, or will this story become another example of impunity? The answer is in a shocking trial that will not leave anyone indifferent. Chapter 1: Suit for Alimony. Olivia Brooks crossed the threshold of the Chicago District Court with the clear intention of putting an end to a case that dragged on for years. She gripped the briefcase tighter, feeling her palms sweat with excitement. Not because she was afraid of the trial, no, she was ready for this moment. But now she will have to remember again everything that she went through, re-examine the moments that she tried to push out of her memory. The courtroom was almost empty, only a few people were waiting for their hearings, and in the corner, a group of lawyers were discussing a case. The court clerk led Olivia to the plaintiff's bench. She sat down, placing the briefcase in front of her, and took a deep breath. A few minutes later, her lawyer, Mrs. Carla Montgomery, entered the hall. A tall woman in a perfectly tailored gray suit, with short blonde hair and a piercing gaze that would not tolerate objection. She nodded to Olivia as she sat next to her and said softly, "Hold on. We have irrefutable evidence. The main thing is not to give in to emotions." Olivia nodded, clasping her hands tightly in her lap. The door opened again, and the defendant, Tiffany Hudson, entered. She had been gone for 5 years, and now that Olivia saw her again, everything inside her felt cold. Tiffany looked flawless, a stylish suit, perfectly styled dark hair, expensive jewelry. But her face showed neither reproach nor pity. On the contrary, her eyes showed irritation, as if she had not abandoned her own child, but Olivia was now wasting her time. She was accompanied by her lawyer, Mr. Lawrence White, known for his aggressive manner of handling cases. Olivia had already seen him in court, tough, sharp, someone who would exploit any weakness to his advantage. She tightened her lips. She won't give them a chance. The court secretary announced the beginning of the session. Chicago Circuit Court. The case of Brooks v. Hudson is being heard regarding the recovery of minor child support. Judge Edward Pearson presides. I ask everyone to stand up. The judge, an elderly man with gray hair on the temples and a stern look, entered the hall and sat down at the table. He looked around the people present as if evaluating each one, after which he spoke. "Sit down. Plaintiff, state your demands." Olivia took a deep breath. Her voice had to be clear, confident. She will not allow Tiffany to avoid responsibility. "Your Honor, I am seeking child support for my nephew, Nicholas Brooks, whom I have raised since he was 3 years old. His biological mother, the defendant, left him to me without any financial support or legal clearance. For 5 years, she never provided financial assistance. My claim is based on the fact that the mother has an obligation to financially support her child." The judge nodded as he took notes. "Defendant, do you admit that the plaintiff took care of your child all these years?" Tiffany sighed theatrically, crossing her arms over her chest. "Your Honor, I admit that my son lived with my sister, but I absolutely do not agree with her demands. She knew that I could not raise Nicholas, and she herself agreed to take this responsibility." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you admit that you are the biological mother of Nicholas?" "Of course, but—" "Then explain to the court why you did not take part in his life for the last 5 years." Tiffany opened her mouth, but her lawyer quickly interjected. "Your Honor, my client will explain her position later. However, we would like to emphasize that the plaintiff consciously assumed the role of guardian." The judge looked at him with undisguised skepticism. "We will return to this later. Let's continue the hearing." Olivia felt everything tighten inside her. She knew that Tiffany would pressure her to voluntarily raise Nick herself. But the truth was different, and she will prove it. Chapter 2: How It All Began. Olivia Brooks sat up straighter, preparing to tell her story. Her voice had to be firm, without unnecessary emotions. She looked at Judge Pearson, who was expecting an explanation. "Your Honor, it all started 5 years ago when my sister, Tiffany, came to my birthday party with her 3-year-old son, Nick. I saw him for the first time, and already from the first minutes I felt how much I liked him. He was a cheerful, inquisitive boy. We spent a wonderful evening together. I showed him books, we played, and then he fell asleep in my arms. But the next morning, everything changed. Olivia paused briefly, recalling those events. Tiffany said that she needed to go to the store urgently. I, of course, had nothing against it, but she did not return. An hour later, she sent a message, "Met some friends, I'll be a little late." A few more hours later, "My girlfriends and I are at a party, don't wait." The next morning is complete silence. Nick woke up and asked, "Where's Mom?" I did not know what to answer. "Have you tried to contact her?" asked the judge, concentrating on writing down what he heard. "Yes, continuously. I called, wrote messages. No answer. Only 2 days later, she wrote again. Olia, be patient. I'm in Seattle with Seth. This is my chance for happiness." The judge grimaced. That is, she deliberately left the child without explanation. That's right. I had to go to work that week, but I couldn't leave Nick alone. The boss gave me several days off, and I waited. I thought she would come to her senses and come back. But instead, I got another message. "Don't worry, Nick is fine. I'm in Sochi with Seth. Everything is great. Tell him that his mother loves him." Silence filled the hall. Not even Tiffany's lawyer dared to object. From that moment, I understood. My sister decided that she no longer wanted to be a mother. And now here she is, 5 years later, claiming that I took on this role voluntarily. Olivia looked directly into Tiffany's eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt that the truth was on her side, and that this time Tiffany couldn't just run away. Chapter 3. The Position of the Defendant. Tiffany Hudson crossed her legs, straightened her back slightly, and thrust her chin forward. She looked calm, even confident. Judge Pearson glanced at her. "Defendant, state your position regarding the lawsuit." His voice sounded neutral, without emotion, but in his eyes one could read wariness. Tiffany sighed as if she had to start a conversation that had long worn her out. "Your Honor, it hurts me to hear how my sister exposes me as an irresponsible mother. She makes it sound like I just left Nick and disappeared, but that's not the case. She's not telling the whole story." Tiffany turned her gaze to Olivia, allowing herself a brief pause. "You must understand that my sister and I have always had different views on life. I have always been a free spirit, a person who strives for something more. Olivia, on the contrary, always wanted to settle down, have stability, children." She twisted her lips in a smile. "The problem is that she was not destined to have her own children, and it was breaking her." Olivia balled her hands into fists, but said nothing. Tiffany continued. "She said for a long time that she wanted a child, even somehow hinted that she could raise mine if I ever got pregnant. And so it happened. I got pregnant. It was not planned. I had just divorced at the time. I was trying to find myself again. It wasn't the best decision, but I thought, why not? After all, Olivia always wanted a child. And yes, I did consider the possibility that she could be Nick's mom." The judge tilted his head to one side. "Do you claim that you deliberately gave birth to a child for your sister?" Tiffany nodded confidently. "Yes, I didn't want to be a mother. It was not my calling. I still tried for the first 3 years, but then I realized that I was simply not made for this. When I met Seth, he gave me a chance for a new life. We were building a family, but with one condition: no children from previous relationships. It was my choice to go ahead. And Olivia wanted to be a mother. She got what she wanted." Olivia felt a flood of indignation flood her, but she only let out a soft breath. The judge looked carefully at Tiffany. "Do you want to say that the transfer of your child took place by mutual agreement?" "Exactly," Tiffany replied, smiling slightly. "But then why didn't you formalize the official transfer of guardianship? Why was the right not transferred legally?" Tiffany pursed her lips in silence. For the first time, her self-confidence was shaken. Chapter 4. Financial Matters. Judge Pearson slowly flipped through a few pages in the case before looking up at Tiffany. Her last words still hung in the air, causing tension in the hall. So, he said, placing his pen on the table, you claim that your sister voluntarily took upon herself the upbringing of your child, and it was a conscious decision on both sides. But explain one thing to me, Miss Hudson. If this was an arrangement, why did you never provide any financial support for Nicholas? Tiffany crossed her arms over her chest and pretended to be offended by the question. Your Honor, I do not consider it fair. If Olivia chose to raise Nick, it was her decision. She never asked for help before. Her voice sounded too emotional, and the judge noticed it. Olivia, who had been silent until now, suddenly turned her head sharply to her sister. Didn't you ask? Her voice trembled with barely restrained indignation. Are you serious? I wrote to you dozens of times. I sent messages, called, and asked for at least a little help. And what did you answer? Hold on. I'm not on my best period right now. I can't. Seth won't understand. As if I had to bear this burden myself. The judge raised his hand, making her stop. Miss Brooks, I understand your emotions, but I ask you to restrain yourself. We are conducting a legal hearing. Olivia took a deep breath, but her gaze remained burning. Tiffany just rolled her eyes. Are you married now, Miss Hudson? Asked the judge. Yes, Tiffany nodded. I have a new family. And your husband provides for you financially. Yes, but this does not mean that he has to support a child that is not for him. Her voice was again filled with indignation. The judge pursed his lips. This child is no stranger to you, Miss Hudson. This is your own son, and it is your duty, according to the law, to provide for him financially. Did you know that Illinois law requires parents to support their children regardless of who is raising them? Tiffany paused. For the first time in the entire process, she didn't look so confident. Her lawyer, noticing this, quickly intervened. Your Honor, my client is currently on maternity leave after the birth of her second child. She does not have a stable income and cannot afford to pay alimony. Olivia snickered mockingly. She did not have a stable income even 5 years ago when she decided to disappear, leaving Nick to me. The judge hit the table with his gavel. This issue is not discussed. You are the biological mother of the child and are responsible for its maintenance. The court will oblige you to pay alimony. The only question is the amount. Tiffany pursed her lips, realizing she couldn't avoid it. But the struggle is not over yet. Chapter 5, Verdict of the Court. Judge Pearson turned the pages of the case once more, then put the papers down and looked up. The tension in the hall reached its peak. Everyone was waiting for his decision. Olivia sat with her back straight, her fingers tightly clenched on the arm of the chair. Tiffany, on the other hand, looked irritated, her eyebrows twitching slightly and her fingers nervously gripping the handle. The court carefully listened to the arguments of both sides. The judge began. His voice was firm, without a hint of doubt. We are dealing with a situation where the biological mother deliberately left her child without formalizing the transfer of custody. For 5 years, she did not take any part in the upbringing and financial support of the child, which is a gross violation of parental duties. Tiffany pursed her lips but said nothing. Olivia kept her eyes on the judge, afraid to miss even a word. Under Illinois law, Pearson continued, the child support obligation does not terminate if one parent shirks his or her obligations. Parenthood is not a selective duty, but a legal responsibility. He looked over at Tiffany. Miss Hudson, your arguments that the plaintiff voluntarily undertook the upbringing of the child do not exempt you from financial responsibility. You did not transfer your rights to the child legally. You did not deprive yourself of parental responsibilities. Accordingly, you are obliged to participate in the financial support of your son. Tiffany parted her lips to speak, but the judge raised a hand, cutting her off. Based on this, the court orders to collect from the defendant, Tiffany Hudson, monthly alimony in the amount of 2 subsistence minimums for the maintenance of the minor Nicholas Brooks until he reaches the age of majority. The amount is subject to adjustment in accordance with changes in the subsistence minimum. Olivia felt her breathing become easier. This was what she was fighting for. It was justice. Tiffany looked shocked. She leaned sharply toward her lawyer. This is unfair. I don't have that kind of money, she hissed. The judge looked at her again. You had 5 years to realize your responsibility. The court made a decision. The meeting is closed. He hit the hammer. Everything was decided. Tiffany gritted her teeth, realizing that this time she wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. Olivia, on the other hand, felt her shoulders feel lighter at last. She had won that battle and could now move forward. And what do you think? Was the judge's verdict fair? Write your thoughts in the comments below the video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next crazier thing.